All right. Next up is Kate Russo from Being in the Shadow in Australia, and she's going to talk about something a bit different called Project Awe. I think you're good to go.
Thank you. Okay, so I always say that totality happens above you, around you, and within you. So we're going to take a bit of a deep dive into our brains here instead of looking up. So, and I hope to convince you that delving deeper into the individual experience takes us closer to the universal. We all know that the experience of totality is really difficult to describe. It's very intense. A lot happens in a very short period of time. And I've been researching the totality experience for over 10 years now. And back in 2012, I was able to do a survey of Eclipse chasers. And what was really striking was that there seemed to be a very common thread that people were talking about again and again. And it's a nice acronym, can you see? But awe is the central component of the totality experience. And boy, is it a really big awe, right? I don't think we can get anything as more powerful in terms of an awe trigger on this earth. But the totality experience, as we know, is very much part of our embodied visceral response too. So I know for me, I get goosebumps, the hair on the back of my neck stands up, I get the chills, my throat closes over. So it's all very physical. And this is part of the reason why people find it very difficult to put words to their experience. And over the last 10 years or so, I've been doing hundreds of, probably thousands now, of interviews, hours and hours of interviews of people after their totality experience, analysing it all from a phenomenological perspective. But it still relies on language, and so we can only go so far. And I'm sure that anyone who does Eclipse outreach can understand the frustration that people still don't get it, do they? People still struggle to understand, if they've never seen totality before, how it's very different and powerful compared to a partial eclipse. So, are we able to capture our visceral responses, our embodied reactions to the eclipse? Now, I'd been thinking about this for a long period of time, and it's interesting that everything sort of aligns and comes together. So with the emotion of awe, I'm a psychologist by background, and awe only really has been started to really take off over the last 10, 15 years. And if you're interested, it's really been led by Dacher Keltner, who's based in California. But what we know is that it's a very complex emotion. It allows us to actually have transformative experiences. It has a positive impact upon our mental health and well-being. People who experience awe on a regular basis tend to have higher levels of gratitude, pro-social behaviour. We tend to do things for the greater good. And I think people who are here, we have this because, we are very motivated to share the love and wonder of the universe with as many people as possible. And recent advances in measuring awe in the lab is very exciting, because in the lab you can actually have someone in an MRI, in a functional MRI, show them a picture of an awe-inspiring scene, and you can capture the changes in the brain just by looking at an image. And so that's really powerful, but actually we need to translate that into the real-world environment. And so virtual reality is used a lot in the lab as well. But in the natural environment, leisure researchers in tourism have been looking at this for a number of years. And they tend to use EEG-based recording devices because they're a little bit more mobile. And what we know is that our brain actually suffers if we're not exposed to natural environments. So not being in nature is harmful to our brain. And a lot of researchers now have been able to identify what the state of awe is when we're in a nature environment compared to a built-up environment. So that data is there, and what we know is that there are key biomarkers. So if we're looking for the experience of awe from our brainwaves, we know what we're looking for. So I found out about all this in December in 22, because I went to a conference in New Zealand and there was someone presenting this very research. And I thought, wow, we've got to really collaborate. And after a lot of detailed discussions, we realized that it's pretty important to do this project. And I was able to convince him, and it's Drew from the University of Tennessee in Chattanooga. So what we wanted to do was to test the feasibility of capturing our embodied experiences in the field, and the stimulus is the solar eclipse. We wanted to capture the total eclipse because it was all about the awe experience, but we wanted to do a feasibility test during the annular eclipse in October. So can we capture the brainwaves? What does it look like? And does it match up with what we're expecting? Are we able to see the awe that we know that is the characteristic profile in a nature setting? So that's what we set out to do. And in our location, the annular eclipse lasted for 4 minutes and 55 seconds. So I put together a solar eclipse village, which had a whole programming across the day. And at the start of the day, I was able to talk with Drew about the project. I was hooked up to all this equipment. We were able to get a couple of volunteers. We got 5 volunteers. They were over the age of 18, and they just had to fit, their head shape had to fit the standard headsets that we had. That was the criteria. Now, this is a pilot project. It wasn't a very controlled environment. But every participant was given 3 things. The headset, and that's what that looks like there. That's Drew putting someone up. And so it's kind of discreet and you can just still do your thing. There's no wires. It's all done by Wi-Fi. A polar ECG chest strap, which we wore under our clothes, and that was to measure heart rate variability. And then also a mobile phone. And that was used to capture and transmit the raw data to a website that was able to capture, that Drew was able to observe. There was a 7-second delay, and then if there were any problems with people's brainwaves, he was able to problem solve. So we just wanted to get as much data as possible. After data cleaning, we got a lot of the analysis done, and what I'm going to show you today is an individual response in terms of brainwaves, and also the aggregated data which identifies a single awe variable that we're able to track awe over time. So there's the annular eclipse. It was cloudy. It was Texas. And this was my 3rd annular eclipse. And if I can be really honest with you, I didn't think we were going to experience awe. I didn't think we were going to capture awe. For me, this was about the feasibility of the project. So this study has completely blown my mind. I'm really surprised about that. And I was able to drag Drew away so he could experience it for a little bit too. Before I put an individual brainwave up, because there's a lot of, it's a very busy slide, this is what we would expect. So there's going to be 5 tracks across. Is it one of those? Top one. Okay, so you're going to see 5 tracks over time. And that represents the 5 sensor headset. So it's capturing different areas of the brain that are more active at that point. So the top 3, we would expect that we would see spikes at various times if someone was in the state of awe. And the bottom 2 tracks, we would expect there to be drops if they were in the state of awe, right? So this is what we found. Now, I'll talk through this as well. So this is time going across here, and that's about an hour. And you can see these blocks, these channels. There when the clouds parted and we could actually see. So there's a lot of cloud on the day. So those were moments of cloud. The long block is actually annularity, and we had 4 minutes and 55 seconds. And you can see that we did see the spikes in how we were that were capturing an awe response. So you can see the spikes in the focus. That means that that person was actually really engaged with the environment around them. That's valence, which means that it was a very positive emotion. That's the arousal, which is intense. It was a really intense, positive emotion at that point. There's a drop in the inward attention, which makes sense, and a drop in relaxation. I can't say too much more because we're out of time, but it was pretty interesting, and that on average to the group, every participant showed changes in which was indicative of awe. Now, the other fascinating thing was the single awe variable. We were able to track awe across time, and you can see the peaks and drops. What's interesting is that even a cloudy partial eclipse triggered awe. That's stunning. We also picked up, that's the peak of the awe, we also picked up a drop in a deep reflection after the annular eclipse. So what does this mean? It's a pilot study. It wasn't controlled, so we can't make huge generalizations. But how exciting was that we were able to use this technology in the field. The stimulus that we were using triggered off an awe response in our people. And, you know, I was thinking that we had to do this during the total eclipse, but even small moments can be captured using this mobile technology that's available to us. So have a think about what that means. Anytime that you're doing engagement activities, when someone says, wow, you're able to pick that up in the field using this technology. So that was a really great finding, and I guess that really shows you that delving deeper into the individual experiences really does bring us closer to understanding the universal. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Kate. We'll take one question, if we have one question. Okay.
Very fascinating. I've had conversations with friends and all about, so glad to see somebody's doing that type of thing. So sounds like just completely objective data, nothing subjective, no microphones to record wows or exclamations or anything that way?
Doing in the real controlled environmental project, we would have a controlled environment, no music. We would have video cameras on the person, so we'd be able to then check what are they doing at that particular point. Are we capturing the stimulus we want rather than just an engaging conversation? And we'd also be using questionnaires as well. So we'd have the interviews, questionnaires, brainwaves, video observations. So you're really triangulating a lot of the data to make sure we're capturing what we want to capture.
Very good. And then in the interviews and other stuff, would you try to capture where the awe is directed, either in a spiritual, somebody, towards just the universe, or versus, their view of God or something that way? Or?
Yeah, I do that already with my phenomenological research. Mm-hmm. And in 2016, that was the focus of the project that I was doing. What are people connected to? What is that sense of connection and who is it with? So that's already been done. I don't think we can pick that out using brainwaves,
right.
But it just shows you that this is another element that we can use, which is complementary to phenomenological research, which really can help us explain how powerful this experience is to people.
Very good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks again.